I'm not going to talk much. I want to start, Maziar, by asking you just a little bit about the what it's like to see your life made into a movie. We were talking before. You're usually the one asking the questions, making the films, and here you're on the other end of it.
Well, I think it's strange for anyone to have a film made about his life, and usually they do it by dead people. So my only consolation is that I'm not dead. So.
That's going to be the sequel.
And John, at what point, between, obviously your show played this interesting role in what happened to Maziar, but at what point did you decide that you wanted to take this on to tell this story in a film?
I mean, the truth of it is, Mazi and I became friendly after his release, and he came on our show. And then whenever he'd come to New York, we would go have breakfast at this little place, and we started talking about the book that he was doing. And he was gracious enough to send it to me and see if there was some way we could turn it into a film. So it began sort of slowly in that over steel-cut oatmeal and orange juice, and it just kind of...
And then huevos rancheros.
Huevos rancheros for me, because that's how I roll. And ultimately, I think what happened was, I'm not particularly well-versed in the movie business. I make ephemeral topical comedy for people smoking pot. And, so the process was, we would send out the book to a list of, we did it like you would do development. We made a list of writers who were brilliant and had worked in this genre, and sent them the book, and then a month later they would send back, that maybe they would read it. And after 4 months, 5 months, I just became somewhat impatient, and I said, why don't I just do this, because it's not the kind of movie that needs to come out 20 years from now. It needs to come out now.
And did you look at certain films? Did you have certain cinematic reference points in terms of doing this type of movie? I thought a little bit about some of Costa Gavras's political films. Watching it, it just has such a wonderful vividness and immediacy to it, and it feels very, very confident for a first timer.
Well, it's amazing what you can do when you don't know you suck at it. You just sort of blindly go into it. I think I actually looked more towards the filmmaker that I referenced the most was Maziar. I had the footage, the footage of the Basij base siege is from Maziar's PD-100. He shot that. That man being killed on the rampart there was shot by Maziar. And so I wanted, and I explained this to these guys, a kind of quiet inauthenticity for the movie, because I'm not Iranian. I wasn't there. I don't do those things. I wanted it to exist in sort of a universal place of quiet inauthenticity where everything else could fall away and you could focus on the humanity of the story. And so that's where the sort of stylistic design came from.
But I think it's interesting that you mentioned Costa Gavras, because for the people from many third world countries and also in Europe, Costa Gavras was the first person who popularized and dramatized political stories. So I remember clearly when the Iranian Revolution happened, one of the first films that I saw was Zed, and then State of Siege, and then, what was the other one about the French occupation. Those films were shown on a regular basis in Iran. So when I was writing the book, of course, I was inspired by that, maybe unconsciously. And then the book translated was into film by John, and I think John did a brilliant job into making that story, that very Iranian story, universal as well, so like Costa Gavras.
Gael, can you tell us a little bit about your process? I mean, like John, you're not Iranian. As far as I know, you haven't been in prison. What was how did you bring yourself to the psychological place that you had to be to play this kind of stress and deprivation?
Yeah, well, I mean, it happens with every film, that there is so much you can you can do it. What I mean is that you just surrender to it and surrender to a beautiful motive or a beautiful motivation, which is empathy, and that's when everything just transcends, and it is a bummer that I'm not that I haven't been to Iran. I mean, it is something that I want to do one day, but we just grabbed all the information that we could get. I mean, from what John would give us and what Maziar would tell us, and all the questions. I mean, questions that you never dare ask. I would ask Maziar, like just little details of things, that might help the character, and also just immersing oneself into many documentaries, wonderful documentaries that have been done, that Maziar has done, and many other documentarians have done about Iran, and just, I mean, it's perhaps the antipodes of where I'm from. I'm from Mexico, and Iran is right in the opposite side, but therefore we connect really well. I mean, we meet both as well, no?
Yes.
So,
I think that's right.
Tehran and Mexico City, they are both most polluted cities in the world.
you see, we have something.
This is the kind of rapprochement that I believe nations can work with.
Can you and maybe John also talk about someone who's not here with us today, which is Kim Bodnia, who plays Rosewater, who's such a phenomenal actor, and it's so much of what's special in the film is the strange chemistry between the two of you, and what it was like to work with him.
Wow. Well, Kim is, I mean, most of you guys must have seen him in Pusher.
Right.
And he is an actor that puts the body on the line. I mean, he puts himself right there, and it's fascinating to be around because you never know what's going to come out, and I love, I mean, working with actors like that. I mean, I wish I was one of those actors that unexpected, that nobody, and that all of a sudden is like almost dangerous in a way. But in this case, it worked fantastically, and I think, I mean, John made a great job in casting him because it was going to be a good mix.
We knew, so much of it was going to be a two-hander, and I sort of knew that at some point that's where we were going to end up. And Maziar and I had talked a lot about Rosewater, and that was the place where I had to do the most projecting, because obviously the style book that I had to work off of from his book was, beautifully analyzed and had, just a beautiful sense of detail. But the one area that we didn't know and couldn't know is Kim's conversations outside of, or Rosewater's conversations outside of his purview. So, but what we sort of came to was this idea of a very mercurial sort of man-child who wants to please the authority figures and is a very, kind of kiss up, kick down kind of an individual. And but you need somebody who has that sense of, boy, this could get very dangerous very quickly. I met Kim in Jordan. Originally, I wanted Jimmy Gandolfini, and he and I had talked about it beforehand, and obviously he unfortunately passed and went to Italy on that trip. But ultimately, he felt like he didn't have the sense of that. He had been there and been in that type of character. So Kim came and met me in Jordan, and we went and we sat in a little room, and we sat down, and I had the script pages in front of me, and we had a little camera there, and we didn't say anything for a long time, and then he just looked at me and said, "I'm not going to read." And I said, "Oh, because you'd flown like 22 hours. And I had the camera pointed at him. He said, man, fuck, I don't. And I thought, you're hired. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So it, it played out very nicely with them.
Unfortunately,
Basically, Rosewater is the combination of, it represents the Iranian government. It's a combination of violence, arrogance, and a childlike lack of self-confidence. And I think Kim has managed to do that beautifully. And you just look at his eyes and you see what Rosewater was. I saw Rosewater's face twice.
Yeah.
And they don't look very similar, but I think their eyes look very similar. And I think Kim did a beautiful job.
These guys unfortunately have to go take the Telluride class photo, and we don't want to keep them from that. So we have